Coming up next in This Week in Computer Hardware, Titan X tested, ship dates and deets for AMD's RX 470 and 460, shiny news from Siggraph, a 15-terabyte SSD, and more. All coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 375, recorded August 4th, 2016. We want the 4K games. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by iFixit, introducing the all-new ProTech Toolkit to give you the compact and complete toolkit for all things DIY. For $5 off your purchase of $10 or more, go to iFixit.com/twitch and enter the code TWiCH at checkout. And by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your home. Go to ring.com/twitch and get $50 off one of their Ring of Security kits, the Bundle Kit or the Pro Bundle Kit, with their limited time offer. Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, most engaging, most delightful, and yes, people, the most useful news and question answers in hardware. PC hardware, gaming hardware. Robert Heron's joining me today. I suspect there will be news on the monitor and home theater front. How you doing today, Robert?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Of course there's going to be info about that. You know there is. Good home theater stuff.
Oh, my goodness. We should talk about, the RX 470 and 460 GPUs. We have specs on those. Ryan left us some information for the NVIDIA Titan X, the Pascal version. He's benchmarked that. Some interesting stories out there, including the Samsung Galaxy Note 7, which people are either excited about or terrified by. But you were pretty... Should we talk about Vizio finally getting the HDR10 update to the P series, or should we look at some of the news coming out of Siggraph?
Let's a quick update for the Vizio P owners and the M series owners. They did announce earlier this week that they'd be pushing out the updates finally that will add HDR10 support to the Vizio P and the M series TVs. Specifically, this is going to allow you to then connect a device like an ultra high def Blu-ray player from Samsung or others and be able to play back that content in full quality. Up until this point, if you happen to pair both of those devices, they would not be compatible, and you'd be then downsampling your ultra high def Blu-ray to a 1080p format output, which really wouldn't look any better than Blu-ray. So, if you're a P or an M series owner, your TV over the next week or 2 or 3 will be receiving its update. They do these typically in a rolling fashion, based upon the serial numbers of the TVs, so they're not doing everything at once and hammering the system. But reports are already trickling out that folks are receiving this update. I believe the version, if you looked at your TV software, would be above version 20. And that will then indicate you probably are good to go for HDR10 support. So that's good news, because the company had promised from the very launch of the product that the P series, the new 2016 P series TVs, their 4K ultra high def sets that shipped with Dolby Vision support would now have HDR10 support, and finally that's added, and it's good all around. I can't wait to see some test results to make sure compatibility and everything is going to be good. You figure though, they've waited this long and they're not going to roll out an update that's completely broken. So good news all around. So if you are a P or an M series owner, you've got more functionality in the TV you already paid for, which is great.
We had some very frustrated people on AVXL who were just like, I can't play UHD Blu-rays. Where is my 4K Blu-ray? We're like, we don't know. They're going to finish it when they finish it. But it's been kind of frustrating to have, and you know, what would a new year be without yet another pair of competing standards to deal with? In this case, Dolby Vision and HDR10.
As I've seen other people note, though, if you compare the launch of the ultra high def Blu-ray format to any previous format we've dealt with that I can think of, any other video format, and this is the smoothest launch I've seen so far as hardware compatibility, feature sets, price of the hardware even. Granted, it listed at $400 for the Samsung K8500 UHD Blu-ray player, but it's already selling for $320. You consider that some of the first drives generally you see, or players you generally see for any new format, are in the $1,000 range. So between that and the fact that it's a format that supports the same color standard they use in movie production, as well as lossless audio. So for the very first time ever now, you have playback devices that will exactly duplicate what the exact quality was of the people who created the art or the content. And that's never been the case before. And now you have display devices that can do these incredible color palettes, bright and dark detail superbly. And it is fan-freaking-tastic, especially the color. That's really probably my favorite part. We're really starting to see colors that simply did not exist in the HD system, like Ferrari red or any strong saturated color. Certain shades of the ocean in the Caribbean were never properly represented. And you've never seen that color accurately represented on a TV until now. And between that and some of the upcoming stuff for Olympic coverage starting tomorrow, at least for the opening events, I'm really looking forward to just more HDR and UHD goodness for all.
Yay.
Yeah.
More HDR goodness. Easy. So what's the exciting stuff that's been coming out of Siggraph this week?
Basically, the show is over there, and what I'm finding online are just some of the papers, the presentations, and some of the people who are so deep in the industry being able to express what's interesting to them. A couple of the highlights I looked at recently was a great presentation by one of the industry leaders at 2K Games, who went into way deep down the rabbit hole in terms of how light interacts with objects in the real world, in terms of how physics works, but in terms of interpolating that into, say, a game engine, and what are the trade-offs to produce something realistic. And not just games, this is also applied to CG and movies and things like that, but how light interacts with different objects, be it a metal or a plastic, diffusion, and then the numbers behind that and other things. Super geeky, but awfully, awfully cool. One other standout video I watched this week too was from a researcher who deals with computer simulation, and they were coming up with unique correlations between when they created a simulation that mimicked a certain event or the way objects were interacting. It turned out that the code they developed was actually very similar to other functions found in nature. And they were just simply posing the questions. They weren't certain of what the answers were, but just by their experimenting within 3D graphics environments and applying that to modeling the real world, they're coming up with new questions to be answered. And it was kind of a good crossover between, the work in the world of CG versus how it applies to the math and science of the real world. And it's fantastic. In addition to that, there is a lot of VR content coming out of Siggraph this year. So if you just want to get a taste for what some of the brightest minds in the industry are doing and how they're looking at this stuff and how they're, optimizing it, it's a good time to take a look at some of the Siggraph videos on YouTube right now, including some demonstrations as well as what the current state of the art in HDR is in terms of capture. There are some amazing new sensors coming out that can pull in more f-stops or more dynamic range than ever possible. And that's going to open up whole new realms of the ability for filmmakers to give us better detail in the content that we're buying and enjoying. And honestly, it is a bit science heavy, a bit fun, but there's so much great content. They're shoving it all onto YouTube right now. And I'd recommend checking out their channel and looking at the video section and seeing what the latest additions are. They posted some stuff this morning that I'm going to go take a look at later today. So it is a fantastic event in terms of just seeing what some of the brightest minds in the industry are doing with the technology, what they're looking down the road at, and some of the challenges they're facing currently. And it's good sciencey stuff all the way around. And it applies directly to, graphics, vision, filmmaking, computers, the pixel, the display. There's a little bit of everything there, and something for everyone. If you're into either the display side of things, the graphics side of things, the production side of things, you will find something in there. And I highly recommend it. It's just, you can lose a few hours of your time in the YouTube channel of Siggraph. So,
so many videos.
Such good stuff.
It is good stuff. So I know you've been getting hands-on with a 4K UHD Blu-ray player. Any initial thoughts? Are you desperate to have all of your favorite movies? Do you need The Big Lebowski in 4K?
Yes.
HDR?
I eventually want to see every movie. Pipe dream. I'd like to see every movie then offered to me in that original color standard that they shot it with, not compressed to the HD standard. I also want to have my content, hopefully for the last time I'll ever have to buy it, in lossless multi-channel audio. And the combination of those two formats, yeah, man, if you can see your favorite content in the new ultra high def Blu-ray format, there's no better way to do it because of the bit rate, the resolution, and just that raw data flow just provides the single best experience I've had in a long time. I'm finding myself staring. Yes, that could be amazing. I believe that was shot on film, and that would be an interesting transfer. I think that's as worthy as any of the Hitchcock classics personally, but that's
Well, it's been funny because, you know, in theory, you've got to be like a couple feet away from 4K to really pick up on the resolution. For me, it's been more looking at some of the stuff that's been shot in HDR and really being impressed with sort of the amount of depth in the color or the amount of detail, you know, in the super bright, the super dark areas, mostly the super dark areas. But, you know, in terms of pure 4K resolution, you know, are you feeling like, oh, everyone should buy a 4K television, or just dial back on, you know, 1080p is fine until, you know, most of your favorite content showing up in 4K?
That's a good question. It's always going to come down to a person's budget for whatever it is they're doing with home theater. You can have an amazing experience with regular Blu-ray, even the streaming services. I mean, once you've got a good display device and you're receiving decently encoded content, it's going to be pretty good. What I'm talking about is that edge of pushing beyond HD, and it ain't the resolution I'm really concerned with anymore. The extra detail is great. You do notice it on, say, a 65-inch TV between 1080p and 4K. It is distinct. It is suddenly things are sharper and clearer, and you're seeing more detail with less artifacting in good quality content. But for me, the thing that really jumps out with the new TVs is that color and the incredible levels of saturation that they're able to achieve now with these systems, and to do it accurately. It isn't so much, we've had TVs that had vivid modes forever, and you've been able to exceed the HD color spec on many LCDs and other display systems for a long time. But there was no standard, though, to accurately use that wide color information or that ability to create a wide gamut accurately. So it's really just, we're in a sweet spot really of filmmakers being able to give us the content the way they actually created it, and not a trade-off to where, yeah, the best experience is always going to be in the theater. Sure, for some of the super premium laser projected 4K, you know, 50 channels of audio around you, that's a pretty unique experience that's going to be hard to replicate in the home. But as far as the color and the detail and the dynamic range of the imagery goes, and the sound quality, it's identical. And finally, and if you're a movie or a cinema lover, it is the golden age of I think the AV capabilities that prices more and more people will be able to afford.
I think it's interesting to watch because, you know, in the early days, the very, very first Blu-rays we saw were not particularly great transfers. They were atrocious compared to the first round of HD DVDs. Then Blu-ray picked up speed, and then once they achieve some certain level of penetration in terms of households, it seems you start getting these mixes between really, really fantastic transfers and just use that, you know, that mess that's on the computer from the DVD we did. It's been interesting to watch because, like, something like the Wizard of Oz is this fantastic, painstakingly redone 8K scan that, of course, set them up not just to do the Blu-ray version, but, of course, to follow that up with a 4K version versus, you know, so many movies from the 80s or more obscure movies from the 70s and 60s where they're just kind of like, that'll do.
There's definitely a lot of content that really will never make that transfer to UHD. Right. Either the originals were lost. There's not enough. There's no reason to do it other than, you know, great, we scaled the content to a higher resolution, but the source material is the same. There's no point to do that. And then a lot of movies, if you have a movie like, you know, The Wizard of Oz or the Bond movies that, you know, are so popular that they're given extra attention. And that's why you get these re-releases of every Bond movie's been perfectly restored and now presented in 1080p, and they probably have, you know, the 4K originals or higher in the back ready to go for a 4K release eventually. And But now that cinematographers have access to 4K, 6K, 8K cameras, 8K coming in wider variety soon, but they have the hardware, they have the dynamic range, they have the ability to capture this color and to edit it and get it through the workflow and out, maintaining that quality. So they now have formats to present it to us in that pristine quality on TVs that are capable, more and more capable of doing it justice. So
Justice is good.
Justice.
Oh my goodness. We're going to come back in a second, talk about the biggest SSD I've ever heard of or seen in my life. But we should take a moment to thank the crew over at iFixit. They're your complete DIY electronic repair solution from the 21,000 plus free step-by-step repair guides, more than 80,000 solutions. If you need to fix something, iFixit.com is a great place to start. They don't charge you for it, but they have a huge inventory of replacement parts and some great tools with lifetime warranty. iFixit has got your repair needs covered. They want you to be able to fix things, period. Today we're talking about their latest and greatest, the all-new Pro Tech Toolkit. It's gorgeous. I have one at my house. I have one on my desk at work. They've completely redone the design, just as rugged and portable as before, but so much easier to use. You know, it's a roll. It's a tool roll with the new 64-bit driver kit. You've seen us. We used to show you the 54-bit driver kit, but the 64-bit driver kit, super easy. You lift the lid off. It's got a magnetic lid. You open up the roll. The tools are all there. All the spudgers, all of the tweezers, a pair of reverse tweezers, plastic opening tools, picks, a suction cup if you're prying open a phone or a tablet. But that 64-bit driver kit is great because instead of like having to pull it out and do the tab and open it up and then go through, and if you turn it over, the bits fell out. And maybe you're not like me. Maybe you don't find eliminating 2 or 3 steps to get to a screwdriver an incredibly amazing thing. But the 64-bit kit itself, it's held to the tool roll using magnets. A big old sheet magnet holds it in place. I actually pull the bit kit off and use the sheet magnet to hold screws together when I'm pulling apart a laptop or something else. There's a ton of bits inside of there. A nice swivel top precision driver, a flex extension. If you ever couldn't get a screwdriver into that sort of side of the PC case with the overhang, that's what that extension is for, the flexible extension. You know, if you're feeling old school, you got a electrostatic discharge safety strap inside of there and lots of spudgers, and iFixit's own rubber-handled Jimmy pry tool, which is pretty slick. Oh, look, kids, it's a safety strap. Oh, my goodness. Best part, though, backed by iFixit lifetime warranty. Buy it because it's awesome, or don't, and you can still get free access to all of the free repair resources on iFixit.com. If you've never been there, go there, look around, see all of the amazing guides they have to fixing things. Grab yourself an all-new ProTech Toolkit and get going on your next fix, hack, or build. Just head over to iFixit.com/twit and use the code TWiCH, that's TWiCH, at checkout to save $5 on your purchase of $10 or more. And we want to thank iFixit for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. Some good stuff in there. I use it all the time.
I have used their guides. I have their toolkits, and it is awesome. I love their stuff.
Fix all the things.
Heck yeah.
Oh my goodness. We've been talking a bunch about Crucial's MX300, 750 gigabyte SATA, 2.5-inch SSD drive. It's selling for $183. It's a fantastic deal. It's just a little less expensive than a 1 terabyte drive. But if you are finding yourself in a powerful need for more storage, not cowbell, but storage, right? Samsung 850 EVO. You might have missed us talking about this, the 4 terabyte, 2.5-inch SATA 3 version, which is $1,500 for 4 terabyte of SSD storage. Very, very fast. But Alan Malventano over at PC Per has something completely unhinged. He talked about it last year, and it was this mythical beast, the Samsung PM1633a. 15.36 terabyte SSD, now selling, we finally have a price for a mere $10,000.
I'll take 3.
Crazy. 15.36 terabytes, a 2.5-inch form drive. They stack 16 dies, each with containing 48 layers of flash cells into a 512 gigabyte package, and then bundle those together.
$100 in 10 years.
It's pretty crazy. Maybe.
Probably less.
Maybe. Probably less. So Computer Discount Warehouse has them for $10,311.99, or you can lease them for $321.73 a month, which Alan points out is a mere 2.1 cents per gigabyte per month for probably 3 years. That's pretty crazy. The warranty, Alan couldn't find a warranty period, but apparently Samsung will cover up to 15.36 terabytes per day in writes. In theory, it's only 65 cents a gigabyte, which is a little expensive when you have 15 terabytes of storage. But I thought that was just awesome and slightly terrifying. It just needed to be talked about.
I like the fact that their M2 format, or the M2 form factor of their SSDs now, just crossed over into the 1 terabyte. And I think they even have a 2 terabyte version of that now. So for a while there, you were limited to about 512 gigabytes. And I love that M2 form factor. One, it's what my notebook uses, but a lot of motherboards support it now too. So, I mean, I already love SSDs just for how small they are. And you can literally like double stick tape them anywhere in a case, which is great.
I've done that.
It makes it convenient. But those M2s, I particularly love just for the size. Like I'm building on an Intel Nook right now that uses M2. I could get a bigger case that holds a full size SSD, but why? So I'm glad to see it. I'm glad also to see the price dropping too. And having like the fact that I could buy a 4 terabyte SSD today, that's pretty cool, even though the price is pretty exorbitant, but it's there. And my 1 terabyte options are decreasing slowly over time. So
slowly. Oh my goodness. We should, I'm now firing up nowinstock.net for the weekly NVIDIA GTX 1080 and RX 480 pricing update, because someday they will drop in price. This, however, is not that. Oh, I don't see any of them for sale for $800 so far. $679, $729, still way over what we'd like to see. The RX 480 is out of stock everywhere, although it was down to $239, and there's some pre-orders at $290. Oh, wait, looks like one XFX board at Best Buy in stock for $249. So buy it quickly if you've been waiting for one. But I bring that up because we finally have some more news on the RX 470 and 460, which are the less expensive siblings of the RX 480. Brilliant HD gaming. RX 470 is pretty much dedicated at 1080p gaming. Expected to ship August 4th. The RX 460, they're calling it cool and efficient esports gaming, which is basically saying it's an inexpensive entry-level 1080p GPU that's going to show up on August 8th. Basically, the RX 470 uses the same Polaris 10 GPU as the 4X80, but some of the CUs are just able to lower performance and increase yields. You know, it's all about 1080p gaming, top quality settings, anti-aliasing enabled, and hitting a minimum of 60 frames per second. Ryan points out in his write-up on PC Per that that's really vague, but you get the idea. They basically want, decent performance, something that will satisfy the vast majority of gamers that don't have a ton of money. 2048 stream processors, like we mentioned, 32 compute units, clock speed at 1206 at boost, 926 at base. It looks pretty good. HDMI 2.0, drawing about 120 watts, which is fantastic if you're building low power system or low power systems. And then stepping down, the RX 460, 1080p resolution at quote high unquote image quality settings, MOBA, CSGO, Overwatch, a lot of inexpensive TWiCH gaming there with high frame rates, 14 compute units, 896 stream processors, 1200 megahertz boosted, 1090 megahertz base clock on that, 2.2 teraflops, less than half the peak performance than the 470, but a pretty healthy price drop, it looks like. We don't know how many cards we're going to see. If it's been like every other GPU launch this summer, they'll sell out in 5 minutes, and we'll be playing the I wonder if it's ever going to ship game. But these are looking really good if you're trying to build, like for my favorite $400, $500 gaming PC price, that RX 470 is looking pretty attractive. So
nice. I'm keeping
we
that.
will see.
I'm keeping an eye on the 1060 from NVIDIA as well, just because of that balance. What am I running right now? I want to say it's a GTX 680. I really want to compare the performance of that to one of the new value cards to see if it really would be something like a 2x improvement. Because currently, I'll be honest with you, I find that I'm not gaming in ultra quality. I'm running at 1920 by 16. What am I running at? 19 by 16 by 10 resolution of some kind, and I find that I can generally run at like high on all the settings and all the latest games I'm playing. But if I try to go to ultra high or any of the, especially when the particle effects start kicking in and the shader-based effects and things like that, that's when I start to notice some performance issues where I usually have to drop either. I tend not to change the resolution, so I end up dropping detail. So I'm itching for a new graphics card, and I've got that on my short list right there, baby. 1060 with at least 6 gigs of RAM in it, if I can find one. So I think they're all. I think.
Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I was just thinking about RAM.
We were talking about it a lot on Tech Thing this week. TechSpot did a fantastic article. It pretty much says 8 gigabytes is the sweet spot for the vast majority of people, and most typical games are good to go with 4 gigabytes of memory, even if you have a bunch of tabs running in the background. And that 16 gigabytes is overkill for almost anybody, unless you're a crazy video editor doing pricing stuff on that. Man, $179, by the way, for the RX 470. We'll find out if that holds when it actually ships. Hopefully in the next few days, and the 460 coming in at a significantly lower price than that. So I'm excited.
Graphics goodness.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like about $180 for the 480, the 8 gigabyte version of the 8 gigabyte version of the 470. So it's a pretty healthy bump.
Nice.
The 460 is expected to be about $50 cheaper than that. So oh my goodness, Ryan got hands-on with the surprise GPU last week. We don't get those very often where a GPU comes out of nowhere. But NVIDIA's Titan X, the new Pascal version, the 12 gigabyte GPU, is a very unusual card. First of all, it's only being sold, as Ryan told you last week, directly from NVIDIA.com. It is priced at $1,200. This is a lot of money. In theory, the GTX 1080 is going to, eventually settle down around $700. But for $500 more, Ryan writes, you get 12 gigabytes of GDDR5X instead of 8 gigabytes and a 35% increase in performance over the GTX 1080. This is really a professional card. This is really for people that have money or who are obsessed with saying they're that much faster than the neighbor's computer. 15 to 40% faster than the GTX 1080 based on GP 104. Just a month ago, the GTX 1080 was the fastest card you could buy if you could find one for sale. Titan X is going to be the new Titan X is going to be a 40 to 80% performance improvement over the GTX 980 Ti. This is not a cheap card, but if you have the money, Ryan says it, look, at the end of the day, and I am 9 minutes from that as we type this, the new NVIDIA Titan X based on the Pascal GP102 GPU is the fastest graphics card on the market, period. If you want the best and have the wallet to support your addiction, you can't get anything better than this. But this is a very expensive card.
Are there any specs on that card for the double precision calculation performance like they use in Pro? I mean, is this a pro graphics card or is this a super high-end consumer card? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, for all intents and purposes, it's a pro graphics card. But if you're a consumer, it's not completely. But if you look at Titan X Pascal, it's like 3,584 GPU cards. It's running at 1,417 megahertz. Huge number of texture units, like 224 texture units, 12 gigabytes of memory, a massive 384-bit memory interface. So you're talking about 480 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth.
Because that was the main thing that separates pro-end CAD CAM cards or the medical anywhere you're doing like super precise measurements, everything has to be perfect as far as the visualization goes. And they use that double precision floating point math. Whereas in gaming, it's all single point. So I mean, I'm used to back in the day, you always had the pro version of the graphics card that specifically did that double precision floating point versus the gaming cards that didn't. And that's why you ended up paying that premium. I'm wondering now if it's just kind of blurred the line where this one card really kind of fills both niches. And that might be a good Ryan question. I'll have to submit a question to the show. That's something I've kind of lost track of. And I'm just
it certainly has a lot of the performance of the Quadro professional cards. It's less expensive than we see some of the Quadro cards.
Okay, yeah, they do still have the Quadro line, so
yeah.
And this is in the GTX line. So
to put it in perspective, when it just the CEO over at NVIDIA just kind of showed up at an AI meeting in San Francisco, a meetup, and launched the card there, basically being like, hey, it'll do like 11 teraflops for single precision floating point performance.
Look what I have in my pocket.
So I don't know if they did much double precision.
I'll look into it. That was just something I was wondering if there was a difference anymore between the pro cards of yesteryear versus what they're doing for gaming today. So you don't need all that precision for gaming.
Oh my goodness. Now you've got me obsessed with trying to find.
I didn't mean to do that, butter.
It's not something we deal with a lot. You don't need a lot of double precision.
Nah, that's really nothing to do for most consumers. So it's just like, but I was curious if, now I'm curious, but later, we'll do it later.
Yeah. We're seeing like deep learning, virtual reality, pro graphics. We will learn more. Ryan's probably somewhere at QuakeCon. Well, he is somewhere at QuakeCon right now, laughing. And one of the nice things about being Ryan is if someone knocks on his door, someone walks up to his door, someone rings his doorbell, ladies and gentlemen, well, he's got the Ring Video doorbell. He got one in for testing, and they're a sponsor this week in computer hardware. We're brought to you by the Ring Video doorbell this week. Ryan can actually see who is outside of his door. There's a home burglary every 13 seconds, and burglaries typically happen when nobody's home. Right? They come in, they scout things around, they see if it looks clear, and then they start getting crazy. Broad daylight, burglars will ring your doorbell to make sure you're away before breaking in. Seems obvious because it kind of is. The Ring Video doorbell has been proven to stop burglaries before they happen. It allows you can see and speak to anyone approaching your door using your smartphone. Ryan's a big fan of it at the office because if he's across the street grabbing lunch and the delivery guy shows up with that new product he wants to get in, he can talk to them through his Ring Video doorbell. Now, Ring's using their advanced technology to protect your entire property with the Ring of Security Bundle Kit or Pro Bundle Kit. They include a Ring Video doorbell, a stick-up cam, a chime, and a solar panel. The Pro Bundle includes a Slim Video Doorbell Pro with crystal clear 1080p HD video and night vision, hardwired so it never needs to charge. The wireless and weatherproof HD stick-up cam keeps an eye on the other parts of your property and allows you to hear and speak to visitors with two-way talk. They've got an optional cloud video recording system so you can easily capture and share video with family, friends, or law enforcement. And you plug the chime into any standard power outlet to know when you have a visitor, even if your phone is in another room. It's pretty cool. The Ring Video doorbell and stick-up cam install in just minutes. Working together, they provide 24/7 monitoring of your entire home, whether you're in the living room or thousands of miles away. It's good stuff. Like I said, Brian got one, to check out and then went and bought a second one. So he's got one at home, one at work, and there's several people who are using these in their personal lives, and it brings them some comfort. They can see what's going on. They can record what's going on. They can talk to people on the other side of the door. It's cool. Join the hundreds of thousands who protect their home with Ring. For a limited time this week, and computer hardware listeners can save $50 off one of the Ring of Security kits, the Bundle Kit or the Pro Bundle Kit. Go to ring.com/Twitch. That's ring.com/TWiCH and take advantage of the lowest price anywhere. Ring.com/Twitch. Save $50 off the Ring of Security kits, the Bundle Kit or the Pro Bundle Kit. And we want to thank them for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. Great news, Robert.
Awesome. I need some.
Yeah. Average broadband speed in the U.S., writes TechCrunch, rises above 50 megabits for the first time.
Lie.
Our long national nightmare.
that whole article is essentially misleading. And all it is saying is that the speed test results have increased to over 50 megabits per year, or 50 megabits for the first time ever. That's not.
You caught it.
There ain't no DSL user claiming that. And generally speaking, the only people going to speed test are the people with incredibly fast bandwidth who want to just brag about it. So, yeah. Internet service in the United States is a horrible mishmash of just crisscrossing interests and overpriced bandwidth. And I certainly am glad to see speeds improving in general for some of the fastest users out there. But in terms of getting, rural areas supported with something beyond, where your cell phone is suddenly faster than anything you can plug into, that's where you really got to just start shaking your head and pounding the table and saying, hey, bring some service to this part of the world as well. And you know what? All these dark fiber projects in some of the major cities, especially here in the Bay Area, I'm glad to see more and more of it. And I'm also, there are always other options too in a lot of areas besides your cable or your phone provider. Like here in the Bay Area, we have a company that will actually deliver way better than DSL. I wouldn't say it's quite as fast as some of the best cable services I've used, but it's delivered over microwave. And so, maybe you are out in the boonies a little bit, but as long as you have line of sight to the tower, and that can be 20 plus miles away, you're going to get fantastic performance. So yeah, I'm glad to see broadband improving, but it's still way too expensive for what it is. And the speed is ridiculous compared to most other countries. So yay.
Yay. Yeah, it's tough to be CenturyLink or an AT&T Universe customer. They're looking at like 40 megabits, 50 megabits.
And the other thing too, they only focus on the download speeds. I mean, yeah, I have 120 megabit down and I have 6 megabit up. Thanks. I mean, granted, I could pay for more, but to hell if it's symmetrical. So that to me is anybody who's doing. I was just going to say, anybody who's doing symmetrical bandwidth at affordable prices is my friend. So,
wow. Better hope Google comes to the East Bay sometime soon.
Yeah. Or go to the library. Use the free Wi-Fi.
So it's interesting to look at that. I guess probably all the people on incredibly slow systems are just too sad to run a speed test. It's just too frustrating.
You hit the start test button and just goes blank. You're just sitting there. Can't even find a server to ping to. And you're like, all right, close that. The pain.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of pain, what a wonderful segue.
You're welcome.
I feel bad for Intel. They issued, thank you, a full recall over the Basis Peak fitness watches that may burn you. This is bad. Quote, we are issuing this safety recall of the Basis Peak watch because the watch can overheat, which could result in burns or blisters on the skin surface, said Intel Senior Vice President Josh Walden. It is important that you stop using your watch immediately and return it. Basically, all the Basis Peak watches manufactured from August 2014 to July 2015, which were sold from November 2014 to June 2016, i.e., last month and a half ago. All Basis Peak watches, for all intents and purposes, are suspect. That said, only 0.2% have reported injuries. That's the word from Gordon Ma-Ung over at PC World. He's the executive editor over at PC World. For all intents and purposes, though, this is the end of this hardware. Intel thought they might be able to deliver a firmware patch that would repair the problem or prevent the overheating from happening. But they basically said it was completely compromising the user experience, and they're asking people to return their Basis Peak watch for a full refund at your earliest convenience. So
sure, we could underclock the CPU in our watch.
But it's already an emotionally traumatic experience. It's frustrating. On the upside, we haven't seen a lot of, and this is Intel. It's not like Intel doesn't have the resources to do something like this. But we've seen a lot of, children's rolling devices bursting into flames or leaving people panic that they would burst into flames. Now we get to worry about watches. cue
Well,
people tweet.
at least
Patrick
Intel watches. So
stories. Yeah, but I mean, there's right now we're in the sort of early phase of wearable Internet of Things devices where they're all fairly swank. But that flood of cheap clones is coming on Alibaba soon, and nothing says ow like some sort of wearable glasses or wristband that bursts into flame at an
my
inopportune.
original Kickstarter Pebble's still chugging along, and I'm pleased to announce that I've received no burns on my wrist yet from it. So it's and the battery life's still pretty good. Actually, I have no complaints. So.
Oh my goodness! Now you're just rubbing it in. We got a ship date for Samsung's Galaxy Note 7. We got a price for it. That is the latest phablet from Samsung. It is a big chunky critter, 5.7 inches, fully curved screen, iris scanner built in, which scares the snot out of me. 4 gigabytes of RAM. Yes, it somewhere inside of there it has the little stylus. Shannon and I were arguing about that. She actually uses the stylus. I was like, "You're the one," which led to a tremendous discussion around that.
I know a lot of people who love styluses just because, or styli, because of either using gloves or just for some of the older clients I deal with, they don't have that. It's difficult for them to use a finger to point and be precise with it, and it's easier for them to have something like a pen in their hand. So for those two uses, and the size of that screen, it's a little bit bigger than the Galaxy phones. So for folks wanting something a little bit bigger than what the phones are offering, that sounds like a sweet deal. That iris scanner, I mean, that technology's been around for a long time, but I'm really glad to see that integrated into a phone.
I really want to see it field tested to see how well it works. I mean, this also, I mean, a couple of things I want to shout out to Samsung for is they only have a 64 gigabyte version. You can get up to 256 gigabytes with a micro SD slot. I love that they have 4 gigabytes of RAM on this. It's the same 8-core processor that's in the S7. I'm loving the maxed out specs on this. I'm tired of 16 gigabytes.
Iris scanning systems I've used in the past have been, well, granted, these were demonstrations using something like an ATM system where it was a simulated ATM, but the iris scanning technology was state of the art. And I could be up to, this was a pretty big machine, but at the time I could be up to 10 feet away from this thing and it could identify me. And so if they've miniaturized that and put that down into a phone, the reason I kind of like the iris scanning stuff over thumbprints and fingerprints is one too many times I have either had crap on my fingers or the key gets wet or I have to press it several times to get it to grab my fingerprint. And I've more than once locked myself out of my phone for 30 seconds because I'm impatient, just pounding away on it, trying to get in. And I'm hoping maybe an iris scanner where it's non-contact, it just kind of glances and determines, probably based upon like the blood vessel patterns in your eyes and other aspects of the unique eye physics. They're able to create a unique, essentially a fingerprint from that and then map that to the user base. And then hopefully we'll see how secure it is and we'll see how quickly hackers can penetrate something like that. I would imagine it would be a little bit harder than say the old, pull a fingerprint and create a fake fingerprint out of it, which isn't terribly difficult to do if you can lift a fingerprint. However, I'm wondering if perhaps they could come up with like a pattern or a way to simulate what it is that the system is seeing when it scans an eye. And maybe you can come up with like a flash card you could just put up in front of it to break through it, or I don't know. I'm just saying. If it's hackable, I'd love to know it. But I generally see a lot of the eye scanning systems touted as being some of the most secure. So we'll see. I'm glad they're putting it into a mobile device, though, because suddenly 100 million people could potentially be using this. So, and if there is an issue with it, we're going to hear all about it.
Yes, we are. Oh my goodness. And also Gear VR gets a new facelift and a USB-C connection to the coming out with the Note 7. So still costs $99, going to be up for sale on the 19th. But the Galaxy Note 7 is going to be sort of the featured partner for that, or at least it's going to launch with that. The Olympics in VR.
Hey, summer, the opening ceremony's tomorrow. Games are already going.
Oh,
it's a good time. I still have to load up that Samsung 4K sampler app madness. You think they would have just created a unique Olympic app, but no. Let's go repurpose something that the labeling doesn't make any sense whatsoever in relation to the Olympics. But I'm going to give that a shot, and I'm going to see. I'm going to see too if any of the Dish folks I know or the DirecTV customers I know are actually tuning into any of the 4K programming being offered through those platforms too. And of course, you're not going to get any of that over the air, but I'm hoping they do put some of this content for free streaming to anybody, at least the opening and closing ceremonies online for at least a short period of time. So even if you don't have cable or satellite TV subscriptions, you'd still be able to access some of the content. So
It's good stuff.
yeah.
Xbox One S teardown on iFixit.com. They're a sponsor, but I love teardowns. It make me happy. It's a pretty good video on that. I'm curious to see how many of these that Microsoft is going to sell, given that we know Project Scorpio is coming in the none too distant future, which is going to support 4K gaming, VR, 6 teraflops of power. You know, in theory, Xbox One games will be backwards and forwards compatible. Microsoft says no gamer is going to be left behind with the new console, and that the new console, the 4K console, will be out for the holidays in 2017. But with that, I'm just curious to see how many people actually buy the Xbox One S. Although I've heard at least one friend of mine who travels with their Xbox that is kind of excited about carrying a smaller box everywhere they go. But they are dedicated, very, very dedicated.
Oh, yeah. Somebody in the chat room asked a question about the Xbox S1, and I'm looking like a madman right now trying to find that question. I'd hate to skip it. Oh, there it is. Xbox One HDR upscaled 4K later, and is the console doing the upscaling or the 4K panel? Hey, that's a good question. Let's see. So the One S will be the new version coming out this Christmas? Do I have that right?
The Xbox One S is available now. It's basically the shrunken of the Xbox.
Gotcha. That's the revision.
Scorpio
of the previous art.
4K version that's going to be holiday shopping season 2017.
Cool. Effectively, if the console is spitting out and the TV is reporting a 4K signal, then that's what's coming out of it. Now, is the game content internally, you know, was that originally 1080p, say, and that's just being internally scaled to 4K? The easiest way to check would simply be to look at whatever the input signal is when you're playing the game. Like on some of the older titles, most of the titles I play on my PlayStation 3, even though the console's set for 1080p 60 out, when it switches into something like GTA 5, it goes to 720p 60 for performance. And it doesn't, only the TV would report that. Otherwise, it's transparent to the gamer on the end. So internally, chances are they're not dealing on any current Xbox system with internally processing 4K video. They're probably just taking the 1080p and doing scaling out or leaving it up to the display device if it's only 1080p coming out of it. So it's one of those two scenarios. Either way, it's gonna look pretty good. The question being, does a 4K TV or the hardware device plugged into it do better upscaling? That's a good question. I would say Microsoft's pretty video-centric. I would be content with their hardware taking care of that, rather than forcing a game console plugged into a 4K TV that could do 4K out being forced into like a 1080p 60 mode or something like that. So, yeah, I don't think you're gonna have any problems. I don't think you're not gonna see any kind of true 4K gaming until these next generation of consoles come out. There's just not enough oomph there to drive that many pixels in real time. Not yet. I think the next gen of console, you see what the modern graphics cards can do as far as, say, 4K gaming, and price points of around $600 or more or $800, depending on which model you're looking at for the latest graphics cards. And that's just the graphics system. You know, that's not the software or anything else around it. And that's something I always kind of look at. I always look at the latest graphic card technology and compare that to what the consoles are doing at the prices. And you kind of get a feel for what's going on that way. But anything going on right now is up converting to 4K as far as gaming goes, if you're getting a 4K signal out of a box, unless you're dealing with something kind of like streaming content, which is already in 4K and it's just simply passing it through. So you're really looking at the next gen of consoles before we get true 4K titles
Yeah.
And hopefully that will bring along with it more than just the resolution. It will bring things like high dynamic range effects or more of them, a wider color palette. How about that for gaming? We're currently using the sRGB palette, which is identical to Rec 709, the HD color standard for computer graphics. And it's well and long overdue that we actually move into a better, a richer, a bigger color palette, color space for gaming in particular. Yeah.
We wait. No, it's I don't know. I've been looking at 4K gaming for about 2 years now, and there's not enough of it. And so many of the games that are out there, unless you're playing like Civ, there's just not enough going on the screen to really justify it on some levels. So I was getting lost in contemplating what would be the ideal 4K gaming scenario. And for me, of course, it would involve a projector. But
that too, or software title wise, some of my favorite games are the Far Cry series. So if I could see Far Cry, like the next gen engine for that, done at 4K and HDR and all of that on a 65-inch screen, I won't complain. I will be hooking up my computer to the television.
There you have it. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Heron. You can get more of him at heronfidelity.com, including his upcoming reviews of Samsung's finest television and their new UHD 4K Blu-ray player. Good stuff there.
Dang, and I have one of their value sets showing up this week too. Not value, but like their 8 series. So a step back from the super premium. Yeah, stuff you would find more in more retail environments too, like a big box store, like a Costco or a Sam's Club or something.
The kind of place I buy my stuff when I'm not buying it. You can find more of me at techthing.com. And, of course, Robert Heron and I do a podcast about home theater and home amusements and HD and 4K content over at avxl.com. I want to thank you all for listening. Mr. Ryan Shrout will be back from QuakeCon next week, although we'll be in the middle of IDF. But hopefully we'll record a show in the middle, literally, of Moscone for Intel Developer Forum and talk about the new and exciting stuff coming from our friends at Intel. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please go to twit.tv/Twitch if you want to learn more about the episodes, how to subscribe to them, and get any more information that you might be curious about. And thanks to our sponsors for supporting the show, ladies and gentlemen. iFixit, thank you so much. And Ring Video Doorbell, thank you so much. And thank you, each and every one of you, for listening and watching. And Robert, thank you for making the time for us this week.
Oh, always a pleasure. Anytime.
All right. With that, I'm Patrick Norton.
Hey, and I'm Robert Heron.
See you next week, or at least me, on Twitch.